All right, everybody, welcome back. You ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
So today we're tackling a pretty bold commentary piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's by this guy Mark from
Oh,
K.I.K.
K.I.K.
Yeah, and you know how they always say knowledge is king? Well,
I've heard that.
this is that kind of guy.
Okay, so we're dealing with a strong opinion here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Got it.
He's basically claiming that the power structures here in the USA
Yeah.
are, well, let's just say they're not what we might think they are.
Interesting.
Yeah. He's really digging into how wealth, corporations, and the government might be a little too cozy.
Oh, so we're going into conspiracy theory territory.
Well, not exactly a conspiracy theory, but
okay.
let's just say he's connecting some dots that most people wouldn't even think to look at.
I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Okay, so Mark's central argument is that the USA is not just, a democracy.
Right.
He says it's like a mashup of all these different power systems.
Yep.
Like, get this, he says it's an oligarchy, a plutocracy, and a corporatocracy.
Whoa, hold on. That's a mouthful.
I know, right?
So we're talking about multiple systems all intertwined.
Yeah, and working together.
Okay, before we get too deep into this, can we just break down what those terms actually mean? I mean, I think I have a general idea, but I'm sure some of our listeners might be scratching their heads.
Yeah, you're right. Let's do that.
So oligarchy, that's basically ruled by a small elite group.
Right, exactly. Like, imagine a tiny group of friends controlling your entire school.
Right, making all the rules.
Yeah, setting the cafeteria menu, deciding the dress code.
Everyone else just has to follow along.
That's kind of what Mark's getting at with oligarchy.
Got it, okay. Now what about plutocracy? That sounds like it's got to do with money.
Exactly. Plutocracy is all about rule by the wealthy.
So basically, whoever has the most money has the most power.
Yeah, think of it like a society where only the richest people get to vote.
Or have any say in how things are run.
Right? Like, their voices are amplified because they have the resources to make themselves heard.
And everyone else is kind of left out in the cold.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the last one, corporatocracy, this is where big businesses come in.
Right. Corporatocracy is when corporations have a disproportionate amount of influence over the government.
So, like, companies dictating laws and regulations.
Yeah, potentially. Think about situations where environmental protections are weakened.
Oh, to benefit certain industries.
Right. Or when tax loopholes are created that primarily benefit large corporations.
While smaller businesses and individuals struggle.
That's kind of the picture Mark is painting with corporatocracy.
Okay, so we've got oligarchy, plutocracy, and corporatocracy. All pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, and he's saying they're all happening at the same time
Right.
here in the U.S.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this guy thinks.
And it gets even more interesting.
Oh, boy.
Because Mark doesn't stop there.
Okay.
He takes it a step further.
What do you mean?
He says that the entire U.S. economy, like the whole system,
is actually designed to fuel something he calls a financial imperialistic system.
Financial imperialistic system.
Wow. Okay, break that down for me.
So essentially, he's arguing that the U.S. uses its economic power to exert influence and control around the world.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, right?
So it's like using economic power to influence global politics and resources.
Exactly.
Interesting. I mean, think about it. The U.S. has a massive economy, a global network of trade,
right,
a powerful currency. These things can definitely be leveraged on the world stage.
And Mark argues that this influence, this leverage, often comes at the expense of developing nations. He points to historical examples like the banana republics.
Oh, right, where U.S. companies basically controlled entire countries.
Yeah, they had a huge influence over local economies, governments.
Even dictating policy sometimes.
Right, and that's kind of what Mark's getting at with this idea of financial imperialism.
So it's not just about having a strong economy, it's about using that economic strength to gain power and control.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Okay, I see where he's coming from. And how does this tie into his point about militarism?
Well, he suggests that this financial imperialistic system often relies on military power to maintain its dominance.
Oh, so it's like using military might to protect economic interests.
Yeah, he's saying that military interventions, a strong military presence around the world.
It's all part of this system.
Yeah, and that those things are tools to protect those economic interests.
And maintain control over resources and global affairs.
Right.
It's a pretty bleak picture he's painting.
It is, right. So if Mark's even partially right about all this, what does that mean for us
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, like what are the implications of all this?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues it raises is inequality,
Okay.
both here in the U.S. and globally.
Right, because if these systems are rigged to benefit a small, powerful elite,
Exactly.
then everyone else is kind of left behind.
And then there's the question of exploitation,
Right, like exploiting resources in developing nations.
taking advantage of cheaper labor.
Yeah, and all of that feeding into this system that Mark's describing.
So a lot to think about there.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about. So, like, even if we don't fully agree with everything Mark's saying,
Right.
it does raise some important questions, you know?
It absolutely does.
Like, are there other ways to organize our economy, our political systems, that maybe create more fairness, more sustainability?
Are there alternative models out there that we could be exploring?
Yeah, maybe models that don't rely on this kind of financial imperialism.
It's a great point. I mean, this whole conversation, even if we don't subscribe to all of Marx's ideas, it forces us to step back and critically examine the systems we live under.
Absolutely.
It makes you question assumptions, you know?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it makes you wonder, are we really in control?
Or are we all just playing a game with rules that were written a long time ago?
Right, by someone else.
And that maybe don't serve us as well as we think they do.
That's a great point to end on. Lots to ponder. So, thanks to Mark from K.I.K.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. You've definitely given us a lot to think about.
And thanks to all of you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep questioning everything.
See you next time.
All right, that's a wrap.
Whew, deep stuff today.
No kidding. I need a break after that one.
Me too. Let's grab some coffee.
Sounds like a plan.